So, you make an impact, you make an impact, you make an impact, you make an impact. Everybody gets to make an impact. Yes. But see, one time when I was standing in November at a Thanksgiving Day giveaway, giving away 15-pound turkeys to families, a question came to mind. How many of these families have a freezer or refrigerator large enough to hold the turkey for the 7 days? And I also began to think, how long will their smile last? You see, these families had an average family income of $20,000 for a family of 5. And although these families were grateful for the opportunity, I smiled and I wondered, have we thought about the access to food or them having a meal every single day? Has the idea that you deserve a meal on Thanksgiving overwritten the idea that you should have a meal every single day? Has the idea that kids should have toys during the holiday season overridden the idea that kids should have joy, hopefully every single day? Our sensation to feel good and serve others cannot overshadow the need for sustainable change. You see, service now is trendy, but sustainable transformation is not. And I understand these opportunities are essential and vital to the survival of many of our communities, making sure that there's opportunities for food, for toys, all these things. I'm not here to say that they're not important. But can I say that we get too comfortable addressing the symptoms of a system, but not the system itself? The system in America that allows 1 in 6 young people in the USA to live in poverty. The inequities that allow 1.6 million youth to go to a school with a police officer and without a school counselor. The inequities that are not just numbers, but are real experiences for many in the community around us. You might know them yourself. There must be another level of critical thinking and engagement when we think about service and the impact that we can make in building an equitable world. You see, I came to this frustration after working at a local nonprofit for over 10 years called Reality Changers. For over 10 years, they've been doing work in the City Heights area, serving first-generation, low-income students and helping them be the first in their family to go to college in America's finest city, known as City Heights, San Diego. I was driven to this work because I was inundated with message. You can change the world. You get an impact. You go after it, do it. And I said, I'm going to do it. So I sacrificed my salary and said, I'm going to go and do this right after college. Came out ready to make a difference. And to that extent, I feel like I have not worked a day in my life. Although some days I might feel like I work for free, I'll say that I feel like I've never felt like I've worked a day in my life. Because every day I wake up and get to engage and do life with young folks between the age of 12 to 20 plus years old and do life with them and see how systems are impacting them, walking with them through moments of experiencing things such as racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, any of those type of things. And you see, I occupy a unique space in their life. Not a parent, a teacher, but a non-judging and loving mentor. In my nonprofit role, I'm responsible for building programs and partnerships and figuring out how we can bring more people to the table to serve and support first-generation students and helping them simply live. Students with real life experience that has sometimes placed them in juvenile hall, suspended, expelled, and many other challenging situations that those families that I work with have experienced. You see, this is how I enter the space of creating change, through meaningful nonprofit work, service that is critical, and I wonder if there can be more. But let me tell you about the benefits of nonprofit. 10.2 million youth participate in educational programs, and these programs create home away from home for so many students after school. And with every additional 10 nonprofits in a community that's focusing on community well-being, there is a 9% reduction in murder rate and a 6% reduction in violent crime. Now, I don't want to oversimplify this and say the challenge is just build a bunch of community centers and then all of a sudden everything will be perfect, because my heart still breaks. Because although there's 10.2 million youth that may be engaged, that may be part of programs, there are still millions others who are not. This engagement gap of students from middle and low in-class families from working class backgrounds allows us to celebrate exceptions to the rules, but sometimes it doesn't have us question the rules. What about the students who didn't have access to the job or to the application? What about the students who didn't have a ride? What about the students who have to take care of their siblings, work multiple jobs, and never had an opportunity to even know? As a nonprofit leader in education, I love joyous educations like graduations, but as a critical thinker, I also think about how many of our students do not graduate. May I suggest that we have gotten comfortable with what success looks like for the lucky enough who are able to have access to an opportunity, and still nonprofits can't do it all alone. So my work has placed me at the front line of frustrations, where progress sometimes felt impossible. With the young folks that I work with, seeing them and saying, I wish there was something more I can do, moments where I sat in front of my black students in juvenile hall and watched them just cry in tears for years that they were sentenced to, and saying, I don't want to be here, I'm not a horrible person. Or when I go to a school and some of my students that are English language learners are told, hey, just chill in the library until November. We don't have a teacher that's available to teach you right now, even though 20.2% of California students are English language learners. Moments where you're concretized that I can bring hope to this community, only to be met with helpless situations and systems. I remember one student, a first-generation student from a mixed status family, who got a full ride to a university that she had to take a plane to. And she was excited. So excited that she called me, and I thought she was going to tell me, hey, Jordan, I'm taking classes, I'm doing well. She said, Jordan, guess what? I said, what? She said, there's roaches here. I didn't leave the hood to go to a university to see roaches again. What is this? And I laughed with her, but I also was reminded of the complexity of the challenge that she was expecting. Going and hopefully going to a place where there could be paradise or maybe sometimes peace, to the reality of there's still work that needs to be done, and everything might not have been changed. You see, on winter break, she came back home, and her mother was being harassed and followed in the community. And as the eldest of 3 siblings, she took it upon herself to come home early to take care of her family and to figure out what they could do. She never left her mother's side for 2 weeks straight. And her family was anxious and afraid due to the documentation status, and she just was like, Jordan, what's there to do? We don't trust anyone. What can we do? And I remember I walked up, because she had called me, and I went to her apartment in City Heights. And as I'm walking up the stairs, she looks at me with tears in her eyes, because she's given up her university, her family's struggling. It's a family of 4 living in a 1-bedroom, and I get to the top of the stairs, and she looks at me, and she says, why, Jordan? Why? Now, the first why I could deal with. The first why I was able to say, I understand why you could be frustrated for some of the situations like poverty or the things that can make you feel uncomfortable. But I remember leaving that moment, going back to my car and weeping for the second why. You see, one of the things that I've learned as a nonprofit leader is that it's not the first why that's the most important. It's actually going to be the second. Because we're not going to out-program poverty, and as a matter of fact, there's a lot of things that we're simply not going to be able to out-program. We won't be able to out-program some of the reading levels for our students. We won't be able to out-program mentorships trying to make up for the lack of love or families that have been broken for a variety of different ways. There's just some things that we have to say, we need to redesign this all together. You see, so what should our approach be? When we're in a position where we want to not only prepare youth, but also transform the systems, I would say that we have to have environments where engagement gaps can address the gross inequities that exist. You see, the first why is cool. It brought you to the work. You saw someone on the street. You saw someone feeling something. You saw someone that had a similar thing. You're like, this is my life passion. But the second why challenges you to ask, why does this even exist in the first place? And why is this one person that I'm meeting that I resonate with, that I feel drawn to, that I feel called to, that I feel like I want to build something to address, is probably not the only one. You see, we must start with our approach. We as volunteers, concerned citizens, humans must be brave enough to not only ask and discover our why, but to question, why do these things even need to exist? Why do men feel like they can't cry? Why do Black and brown students get overly suspended? Why do we feel like some of these things exist? And Deming reminds us this, that every system is perfectly orchestrated to get the results that it is getting. So, if the outcomes are orchestrated, then we need to redesign our approach to how we can address some of the most pressing issues outside of just volunteering once a week. So let today be a day where you accept your first why, but also question it. What has informed your heart to care? But what was the environment in which your care was developed, that injustice was necessary, and you were like, I need to address that. So serve in your local nonprofit, your community advisory board, whatever. Do all of that and make sure to vote. Cornel West reminds us that love is what justice looks like. And we have work that we must do to make sure that every space that we go to, that we have a call for change and accountability, to speak truth in love and to fight for progress that outlives you, because we might not even see the impact that we want to see. But if we go into boardrooms, companies, schools, and everywhere and say, this isn't just going to be a moment, but a movement that I hope for generations will have to come, then that is the type of work that we can do. Not just the first why, but the second. Work that brings resources from all different types of stakeholders so that we can build coalitions to listen to those most impacted and say we can ultimately do this together. We fight too hard to help a cause and not enough to end it. Can we create a world where ultimately I won't have a job, where nonprofits don't need to exist? Can we have leaders that aren't worried about equality, but fighting for equity and liberation and willing to fight for our students and their families, that we can look at hope and despair, college graduation and dropouts, knowing that there are complex issues where it's not just going to take simple solutions or one-time helps, but a continued sustained support in making a difference across everyone. The ease of success we can feel if one student gets into college, but the challenge we feel when we think about all of our students and the work and support that they need. This is not simple nor for the faint of heart, but it is to celebrate the progress, but to become uncomfortable with the way selective progress can occur. This work is going to require us as a collective whole to start with ourselves. The you who is willing to challenge yourself and what you're doing and what you're thinking and saying, I don't just want to make a difference one time, but I want to figure out how we can design systems that will help us build an equitable space for every single person that comes after me. You see, our future doesn't need a savior. The system doesn't actually need anything. We need a system that doesn't require a savior. So challenge with radical love and let your desire for a world of justice and equity be your vision. I'll leave you all with this final quote. And this final quote says this: don't be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. We all have things that we care about, whys that might feel like they're timeless, generational, and embedded in the normalcy of what we see as acceptable in just life. So don't be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justice now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You're not obligated to complete all the work, but you're also not free to abandon it. So let's work together in answering the first why, but also questioning what are the whys that allow our first why to even exist, and build an ultimately better, equitable world for all of us now and to come together. Thank you.